We now start off with our feature on the show today as we look at the country's external reserves, which has lost some steam, dropping about $180 million in just 2 weeks. Well, that's the latest figures obtained from the Central Bank of Nigeria. According to the figures now, the reserves, which stood at $33.28 billion as at the 1st of this month, dropped to $33.09 billion as of the 12th of the month, before gaining slightly to rise about $33.1 billion on the 15th of July. The reserves lost some more steam at about $905.5 million in June after it fell to $33.32 billion at the end of the month of June from $34.23 billion recorded as at May the 31st this year. The reserves so far stood at $4.88 billion at the end of the month of April 2021. Joining me now to discuss this and much more via Skype, I have Olumide Eson, Partner, Tax and Regulatory Services, Deloitte. Good to have you on the Breakfast Show this morning.
Good morning, David, and thanks for having me.
Yes. Now, the excessive dependence on oil for foreign revenue, foreign exchange sustenance is not necessarily tenable if we look at medium to long-term forecasts. It sounds cliche to still be talking about diversification and then reducing our exposure to external shocks, as well as preparing the economy for the global shift from fossil fuel to green economy. How do we begin to change this narrative, our fixation on oil, and then stabilizing our foreign reserves, looking at agriculture, manufacturing, and much more?
Yeah, thanks, David. I think it's first important to state that where we are now, about $3 billion in external reserves, including both liquid and blocked reserve, it's just equivalent of 6 months import cover for an import-dependent nation like ours. Now, the external reserve is accrued based on, foreign direct investments, export proceeds, grants, loans, diaspora remittances. Over the years, what we've seen is a structural issue where, for example, diaspora remittance has dropped by 27% just between 2019 and 2020, dropping to 12.9 billion from 17.6 billion. That partly it's due to COVID, but also partly due to people devising new means of transfer and exchange, like people using crypto. Foreign direct investment has been impacted over the years due to issues such as insecurity, as we all know it, and also, debt of infrastructure in Nigeria. Export proceeds. We've had challenges with non-oil exports. We've not been able to grow our share in the market. And for oil export, COVID significantly has impacted via, OPEC restriction, how much we're able to export in Nigeria. Currently, we're doing, just about between 1.3 and 1.4 in terms of crude oil, and maybe another 350,000 barrels a day of condensate, which is not regulated by OPEC. So even if the price were to be $100 a day per barrel, now, the volume we're able to export is limited. And let's not forget, whatever volume we are exporting in Nigeria is not all NNPC equity share. NNPC is roughly just about 50% of it, because the other international companies and the other players in the industry own the rest. If you know typically how the joint ventures operate, typically NNPC will own 60%, and then the other partners will own 40%. In some instances, lower than that. So what you find out is we must not continue to calculate to say, look, we're exporting 1.7 million barrels a day. So where is the dollars coming from that? Not everything belongs to the government of Nigeria. Just about 50% of that belongs to the government of Nigeria. So, we must certainly look at, why are we in this distress? And part of the reason is because we are purely an, import-oriented country. We have failed over the years to industrialize our economy and have sustainable exports.
Olumide, I'd like to butt in here in terms of industrializing the Nigerian economy. To do that, we need strong buffers to mitigate any form of external volatility, especially for the manufacturing, agriculture and services sector taking center stage. And then looking at other emerging sectors of the economy, all of these are also hinged on infrastructure development. With the pattern of growth we have at this point in time, do you think Nigeria can become an industrialized economy in the short term?
In the short term, certainly no. You don't become industrialized in the short term. You become industrialized in the long term. And, the key thing, which I think is still missing in the equation, is that to become industrialized, it must be a deliberate policy. A deliberate policy of import substitution, a deliberate policy of establishing industrial zones within the country, industrial free trade zones, areas dedicated by government for exports, where government has deliberately provided infrastructures, government has deliberately provided power. Those are the things you need to attract investors, local and foreign, to those zones. We must be deliberate about that. If we do not, we will never be industrialized.
Okay. Now, wrapping up our conversation, I would like your last forecast now. What would you say we would have in terms of the pattern for the rest of the year in terms of our reserves? Do you think we'll still have a downward spiral, or we would later balance up a little bit with our foreign reserves? In just 30 seconds.
Well, I think it will be up and down. The oil price would increase, and again, we're expecting the loans which have just been approved by the National Assembly, somewhere between $5 and $6 billion, those would certainly help. In the medium term, we would see some relief when when Dangote refinery comes on stream. Perhaps we'll be able to save some $5 billion a year from import of petroleum products in Nigeria. So, and then with the PIB being passed as well, hopefully we'll start to see investment flow back into the Nigerian petroleum sector. So, and then if government can just complement that with some deliberate attempts at industrializing the economy, providing, facilities in industrial zones, and doing some deliberate, import substitution, we will be able to stabilize and defend the Naira.
And definitely key incentives are necessary to achieve all of these. Thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Show this morning, Olumide. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. My pleasure. Yes. Bye for now.
Thanks, David.
Well, that's it from the business desk this morning. Many thanks for watching so far. Happy holidays.